Hi, my name is Victoria Gehring. This is for EDUC 632, the spring semester of 2022, and today we will talk about the writing process. For today, we will have 3 different learning outcomes. The first one is the class will be able to explain writing's place as one of the 6 language arts. The next is the class will be able to explain and complete the 5 steps of the writing process. And finally, teachers will learn new ways to differentiate activities and then be able to apply them to their current classrooms. As you all know, there are 6 language arts. There is listening, talking, reading, writing, viewing, and visually representing. There are 2 oral, 2 written, and 2 visual parts of language arts. Today we'll be discussing writing, which is one of the 2 written parts of language arts. Now, coming into this, you might be thinking that you all know all about the writing process, inside, outside, everything about it. But today, I want you to come in with a new look, and I'm hoping to share some tricks, not just for the students, but for you as the teacher to help along with burnout. Before we go into what the writing process is, there's one thing that all teachers need to take with them, and that is that the goal of both reading and writing is to create meaning. Reading and writing have been said to be humanity's last chance to explore, explain, and express one's own life and experiences to those who might walk down a different path. Even if 2 people are reading the same work, they may pull 2 different meanings from it based on their own experiences, and this is what we need to instill within our students with each and every writing and reading activity that we do in the classroom. It should be more than just busy work. It should be to express, explain, and demonstrate. It's to help the students find their own meaning to create and allow them to practice this. The writing process, just like any good journey, has steps. These steps are to ensure that the work that is being put forward is actually the finished draft, and not the draft that the student just finished the class period before. Also, having the students work through the entire writing process will help lessen the workload for the teacher during grading, but we will go more into detail on that later. These are the 5 steps of the writing process: pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing, or the final draft. These can be done in a different way. The students can do them individually. They can be done in groups, such as in their literature circles, or you can have the students do some steps together as a class. It really is up to you and your own teaching style. Each has its own benefit. The first stage is pre-writing. This is where the students are introduced to the topic of the writing project or activity. They will be choosing their topic, identifying the audience or whom they are writing to, the purpose of their essay. Are they trying to explain? Are they persuading? And so on. Students should be engaging in rehearsal activities such as brainstorming with the class. If needed, they should be researching. They should be using graphic organizers to help sort out their ideas. And then they should be choosing a form or genre based on the audience and the purpose. This stage of the writing process is a good time for the teacher to go around and see how each student is doing and offer their help and support and guidance if needed. This can help the teacher not need to address topical issues down the line when they're grading the writing assignments. The next stage is the rough draft. This is all about just getting your ideas out on paper. It should be messy. There should be crossed out sentences, marked up pages, words circled, the whole lot. Tell the students to focus on the content of the paper rather than the mechanics. They can go back and fix all of the grammatical and spelling issues later. They should just be focused on getting their ideas and thoughts out on that paper. They say that writer's block is caused by the fear of failure, the fear that your writing isn't good enough. So as teachers, we need to take that fear away and just help them get that writing on the page. And you should tell the students to leave a space between each line so that you or other students or even themselves can add comments or revisions between the lines. This will help the paper be easier to read later on. And a trick for teachers to keep in mind is that the more work, the more editing, the more effort that is put in the paper now and early on, the fewer editing and grammatical marks that you will need to do later on when the final draft is turned in and submitted, which means less work, less stress, less paper load. This next stage is called revision, and revision means to see again. So this is where the student is rereading their rough draft, and this is where those grammatical skills and writing skills comes to play. It is the student rewriting it based on the rough draft and based on feedback from peers. Now this can be done in groups, as a class, from the teacher, but then after this process, usually there is a conference either with the group or with the teacher to make sure the student is on track and understands the revision. When it comes to revising groups, there are some steps as well. So the first is the writer reads, then listeners will offer compliments, then the writer will ask questions, then from this, the listeners offer suggestions, and then this process is repeated till everybody has shared, and then from there, the writers will plan for a revision and then complete the revision process. The next stage is the editing stage. This is where students are proofreading their own compositions. They might be helping proofread classmates' compositions. Students are identifying, correcting, or suggesting errors that they see within the papers. And this stage is like buffing out the diamond. This is making sure the students are prepared and ready to create that last and final draft. Again, the suggestion is that this is done in groups, but if the teacher decides to have the students grade or proofread each other's papers, the best thing to do is to teach them exactly how you would want them to do this, and teaching them the difference between constructive criticism and destructive criticism. And also telling them that this is more of a critique of the work and not a review. Critiques offer improvements, they share ideas and tips, and they help improve for the next draft. Where a review is for a finished work, it doesn't give suggestions and its usual vague and overall opinions of the work. This means less work for the teacher later on if this process in this stage is done correctly. That means during grading, the teacher isn't editing the paper and instead grading on content according to the rubric. Less work later on means the teacher is freer to give more comments about their thoughts on the paper rather than just correcting grammatical errors. The last stage is the publishing or final draft. This is where the student pulls everything together, all of the editing, all of the correcting. This is ready to be turned in. It is published in the form the teacher wanted, whether that's a portfolio, a binder, a Word PowerPoint, whatever the form is, and it is ready to be put on the teacher's desk. So how does this help teachers? This helps teachers because it breaks one large essay or writing activity into smaller bits and allows the teacher to give feedback over time rather than a large amount of feedback at the end. The more feedback that is given during the editing and revising process means the less mechanical feedback that is necessary at the end, which means during the final draft, the teacher can just focus on giving feedback and comments based on the content. Because let's face it, a teacher could spend anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes grading each essay or writing activity. So for an entire class, it could take a teacher anywhere from 2.5 hours to 4.5 hours, and this can lead to burnout. So by using the writing process, the hope is that we can lessen that time grading each essay. When planning a unit, it is important for teachers to make sure that the lesson units are not only manageable, but allow enough time for all of the students to grasp and understand the concept. The student needs to understand the lesson more than just having the terms memorized. Need to also be able to understand the terms and concepts enough that they can apply those and the other subject matters to their own life. This may become challenging as the class may have students who quickly grasp the concept, and then there might be students who are struggling and take a little bit longer. Students who are struggling, especially in literature, are students who are performing below their expected level and age group. They are falling behind their peers, and it also applies to those who are disengaged and uninterested in the reading and writing learning process. One way to help improve grades and involvement with these students who are struggling is to make it more appealing to them and help boost their self-efficacy. One way to do this is to not just teach towards state testing. this may come across as boring and repetitive, but instead find ways that involve them or objects, subjects that are passionate or that they like. One characteristic of a struggling learner is that they're not engaged or that they're disengaged from the learning process, because to them, they don't understand reading or writing and they're never going to. So instead of getting their hopes up and trying, they just refuse to or don't want to. One way to help engage them is to give them choices, give them autonomy. So what I like to do for writing is give a general prompt and allow them to pick the specific topic. One way to do this with writing is to have an essay that's focused on an author and compare the author's life to the written works that they've produced, but allow the students to pick that author and to pick those written works. This allows the student to fill in what we need them to do for state standards, but also allows them to focus on topics that they enjoy and they like. Not every student is going to like math, not every student's going to like English, not every student's going to like social studies, but we can find ways to blend these subjects to make them exciting and interesting for the entire class.